Welcome, everyone. This is James Barham from the USDA Rural Development Office. I'm very pleased today to welcome you all to a webinar that we're having entitled The Role of Cooperatives in the Local Food Systems Development. I also have some sad news. Our colleague, Andrew Jamarlowitz, has gotten tied up and cannot get out of a meeting. That happens at times, and so I will actually be playing the role both as a presenter and also moderating the session. Sorry that we won't have Andrew with us today, although if he can get himself out of the meeting at some point, he may join us to say a few words. So like I said, today is the webinar that we're all very excited to offer. It's part of the celebration of National Cooperatives Month. This being the second to last day, so we were able to squeeze it in at the last minute here. We have a full agenda of fantastic speakers. So without further ado, I'll get started. Just one technical piece to the webinar today. We will not be doing any audio questions. We're only going to be using the chat box. So if you look in the left bottom corner of your screen, you'll see a chat box. And if you have any questions at any time during the webinar, whether technical, because you're having issues with the webinar, or just in terms of the content and want to ask a question to one of the presenters, by all means, type in your question there. If it is a clarifying question that maybe deserves more of an immediate answer, we'll ask the presenter to answer it then. If it's more of a more general question or something that might make more sense at the very end, we'll hold the question to the very end. And there might be a few questions that come in that are similar that we'll kind of compile together. So we do expect to have at least 15 minutes worth of Q&A, so you don't need to wait till the very end to ask your questions. As they come up, just put them in the chat box. So thanks for that. And without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce you. I'm going to go through all our speakers today, and there's a lot of them. There's actually 6 of us speaking. And the first with the USDA presenters, I want to have a little shout out and welcome to Eleanor Starmer. Eleanor is USDA's National Coordinator and Advisor for Local Regional Food Systems. In this role, she acts as an advisor to Secretary Tom Vilsack and guides department-wide efforts to strengthen local and regional food systems through their Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative. Prior to joining USDA in 2011, Eleanor worked on agriculture and rural development policy issues for over a decade with nonprofits in Washington, D.C., Minnesota, and California. The next person, that ugly guy on the screen, is me. And I am an agricultural economist at USDA's Rural Development Agency. I spent quite a few years over in another sister agency, Agricultural Marketing Service, and have just recently made the switch over to Rural Development, and it's been a great ride so far. I also sit on the Know Your Farm, Know Your Food initiative management team along with Eleanor, and I've been leading up the department's efforts around food hubs and related food businesses. And then finally, and very excited to have Margaret Bow on the line with us as well. She's a Cooperative Development Specialist with USDA based in Wisconsin. She has assisted in the formation of many, tens of cooperatives, over 31 cooperatives to date in her home state of Wisconsin. She is also one of the handful of nationally recognized people with experience structuring multi-stakeholder cooperatives. And she's helped organize such cooperatives as Fifth Season Cooperative, the Wisconsin Food Hub Co-op, and many others. So we're really excited to have Margaret on the phone with us as well, with all of her vast experience in co-op development. And then our other friends from the co-op community include Robin Seidel. Robin is let me get this right. Robin Seidel works on building the community-owned economic system at La Montanita Co-op through community development and education. She directs the La Montanita Fund, a grassroots investment and microloan initiative providing food systems capital and veteran farmer projects, growing the next generation of food producers with classroom and hands-on skills training among other community-based projects. So it's great to have Robin with us. And then we also have Jan Tusek. Jan is the founder and director of the Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center. Since 1999, under Jan's leadership, the center has been established as one of USDA Rural Development Cooperative Development Centers. She has worked with numerous types of cooperatives and is focused on assisting value-added agriculture, agricultural marketing, and food hub cooperatives in their development. And again, Jan is a longtime friend of USDA and for the co-op community, and it's wonderful to have both her and Robin on this call as well. And then finally, last but not least, Carl Sutton. and his wife, Darcy Jones, own and operate Fresh Roots Farm, a certified organic produce and vegetable seed farm in western Montana. Carl presently serves on the board of directors of Western Montana Growers Cooperative, and prior to committing to farming full-time, Carl worked as a cooperative business specialist at Lake County Community Development, which is the same organization that Jan has worked for under her Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center. So it's great to have all of these wonderful people on the phone. In fact, I'm quite humbled. I'm a local food junkie, but still a novice when it comes to cooperatives. And so even though I'm one of the presenters, I'm also looking forward to learning from all these wonderful, experienced people with us today. So I just want to walk you quickly. Well, happy Halloween, first of all. Tomorrow is Halloween, and I've got 2 small kids, and I'm kind of excited about that. And I have a little treat at the end for all of us that you'll see, and I might get in some copyright problems with. But anyway, just quickly, I'll give a little outline of what we'll be talking about today. We'll start off with Eleanor and talk about the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative. And then I'll jump in and talk a little bit about food hubs and co-ops from a national perspective. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty about developing co-ops and lessons from the field, in which we'll have Jan and Margaret speak. And then we'll get into running co-ops with Robin and Carl, talking about lessons they've learned about being part of and running cooperatives in their states. And then hopefully we'll have enough time for questions and answers. This webinar is expected to go actually over an hour, so an hour and 15 minutes is what we scheduled it for. So that should give us enough time for everyone to be able to get their questions in. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Eleanor, and from here, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Jim, and it's great to see so many people on the webinar. This is a great opportunity and a way to close out Co-op Month with a bang. So I'm just going to very quickly talk a little bit about USDA's activity related to local and regional food systems, and then we'll get on to the folks who are doing this work on the ground. But quickly wanted to talk about how we're engaged and really why USDA as an institution thinks that this work is so important. I don't think I need to tell any of you what a local or regional food system is. I will mention that we, even though it's on the slide, we don't have a set definition as USDA of what constitutes a local food system. There are a couple of our programs that did have to define local food for the purposes of administering the program. But as an institution, we don't have a set definition. But we generally talk about it as a system in which all of the phases of the life cycle of food are taking place within a specific region, however that might be defined. And the benefits that come along with that food system, whether they're economic, social, environmental, nutritional, community benefits, et cetera, accrue to that local community. A big piece of this, of course, is that the products are actually deliberately marketed as local products so that consumers can choose to support their local businesses with their purchase. And there are a lot of other values that go into a local food system and that are conveyed along with that product. And I think we'll hear more from some of the other presenters about how various values are built into their business models and into the way that they market the products. But that's what we talk about when we talk about local and regional food. We also talk about a lot more than produce, although certainly many folks know produce is kind of the gateway product for local foods. Many people, when they see local, they think farmers market, fruits and vegetables. We do a lot around that here at USDA. We also want to emphasize opportunities to do local products outside of fruit and vegetables, dairy, meat, poultry and fish, grains and beans, etc. And actually, there's some new research that's been done by our Economic Research Service that has found that more than half of all of the farmers that we've surveyed who are involved in local food are actually doing livestock production. So that's a big piece of the puzzle and opportunities for producers of all sizes and those that are raising and growing lots of different kinds of products. Why is USDA involved? We really see local food as an opportunity to meet a lot of different goals for the department and a strategy to help us get there. Whether we're talking about economic development and jobs that come along with local food systems and the value chain businesses there, we are talking about using local foods as a strategy to increase access among underserved communities to healthy food. We talk about it as a way to connect consumers with agriculture, help folks learn a little bit more about farming and ranching in the U.S. and why it matters. It's an opportunity to preserve farmland as we talk about ways to keep farms viable and keep farmland in farming. Local food is a big strategy there. And of course, there are a lot of farmers who've been in the business for a long time who are doing local food or getting into local food, but it's also a real starting point for new farmers who maybe don't have the capital to be able to get a very large plot of land and do corns or beans or some of our more traditional crops, but can get their foot in the door doing high-value, locally marketed products on smaller parcels of land. So this is a really important component of our beginning farmer work as well. And finally, the way that we coordinate this work is through the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative. And I'll talk more about some of our tools at the end of the presentation. But I do just want to highlight this is really an effort that brings together folks from across all of USDA's different agencies to look at ways that we can strategize and coordinate and look at our own programs and find ways for them to work more effectively for the producers and the businesses that are engaged in local food. And so we're doing policy work, again, looking at our own programs. We're doing outreach and getting resources out to the public and really letting folks know that our doors are open for local food producers and businesses, and we want to be working with you to make things happen. So that's a brief overview of our activities, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim. And then I'll be back at the end just to run through a couple of our resources and share those with you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Eleanor. I appreciate it. In fact, talking about Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, and part of the efforts there is to really coordinate activities within agencies. The topic I'm going to talk about right now, food hubs and cooperatives, is really part and parcel of exactly what is a result of working through the Know Your Farmer initiative, which is when I was over at Agricultural Marketing Service, I was often coordinating efforts and working closely with rural development. Now I'm over at rural development, and I work closely with Agricultural Marketing Service as well as many of the other agencies to support the development of food hubs across the country. So food hubs and cooperatives. There's a very close and intimate tie-in between food hubs and cooperatives. Many food hubs across the country are structured as cooperatives. And if we go back historically, really many of the traditional marketing co-ops that were marketing their products locally were food hubs before, of course, the term ever came around. So I'm going to dive in a little bit today on some of the parallels and some of the work that we know about cooperative food hubs. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time in the definition of food hubs. We can go back and forth for a long time about what it actually means, and I'll spare that conversation for another time, or we can have that conversation offline. I'm happy to have it. But the key piece here is that food hubs are carrying out aggregation, distribution, marketing services on the behalf of local farmers to serve local markets. That's kind of it. But it's a little bit more than just that, in the sense that there's also certain production services and community services that you see here on the diagram that in some ways separate what a local food distributor does and what a food hub does. A food hub is far more engaged actually in community activities and with producers to ensure that they're going to meet the needs of the marketplace, as well as ensure that those producers can make a decent living farming their products and marketing their products. There's food hubs all across the country. There's strong concentration of food hubs in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and the Upper Midwest. Not surprisingly, these are also areas where you have more small and mid-scale growers, and one of the rationales and one of the reasons and justifications for food hubs is to aggregate product from small and mid-sized growers in order for them to actually be able to meet higher volume market demands. And we've seen a pretty steady growth, particularly in the last 5 years. In fact, almost half of all the food hubs that we have identified across the country were actually started in the last 5 years. And this is where things get a little more interesting in terms of the topic for today. So the majority, well, I shouldn't say the majority, but the largest share of food hubs actually are privately held or for-profit enterprises, followed by nonprofit. But closely after that, 1 in 5, about 20% of the food hubs across the country are actually structured as cooperatives. One of the other ways one of the other ways that we classify food hubs is by the markets that they serve. And so there is a sizable number of food hubs that are serving what we call kind of the farm to business model, or serving businesses, institutions, whether that's grocery stores, schools, hospitals, restaurants. Then on the other side of things, you have a number of food hubs that are working directly with consumers, selling to consumers. This could be kind of the form of a multi-farm CSA, a buying club, a mobile market, these types of operations. Again, the aggregation, the distribution is still happening, even though it just happens to be that the end product is going directly to the consumer. And then there's, of course, a number of them that do both, that serve both the wholesale market as well as direct to consumer. Now, in the next slide I got here, I've actually looked inside those numbers to see where do cooperatives really fit in versus the rest of the hubs. And I think it's kind of interesting here, and it's something that I kind of expected to see anyway, is that you have a kind of similar breakdown in terms of the types of markets that they serve, not that different, but probably the little bit more interesting difference is that you see that the cooperative models have been around a little bit longer. And it really does go with the history of a number of producer cooperatives and food cooperatives being involved in local food. Probably they really were at the cutting edge of a lot of this types of business enterprises. And so one of the trends you see is that the cooperative model has been around a bit longer. One of the other interesting things is that a number of these multi-stakeholder or producer and consumer cooperatives have popped up, and we're seeing that trend emerge and continue to grow. So just in terms of a few examples, I'll give you one of the kind of traditional ones that many of folks within the producer co-op community know very well, and that's Tuscarora Organic Growers Co-op. And they've been around since 1988, so a long time, very successful. They actually service the Washington, D.C. area, a number of restaurants and retail grocery stores and some schools even. And they're a robust group of around 44 members, gross annual sales over $4 million, and they're that classic food hub servicing these wholesale market channels. One of the things that is actually really neat about this particular group, as well as a lot of cooperative food hubs, is the amount of the sales revenue that actually is going back to the producer. So in the case of Tuscarora, 75% of that sales revenue, a much higher percentage of the overall consumer draw than you would find in most wholesale distributors. And then a little bit more different model, but one that's also started to gain traction over the years, is this consumer producer-owned cooperative. They're called, one way is to call them online buying clubs. And Oklahoma Food Co-op was one of the early pioneers in developing this type of business enterprise. Started in 2003 with 36 consumers and some producers, and have grown to now include around 90 producers and over, well, what is it, almost 4,000 consumer members, and have had gross sales of about over $850,000. And the way they do this is that, each producer has their own page. They get online. They post they set their own prices. They post farm stories about in their production practices, so that you really do get to know your farmer and how they grow the food. And then you have the consumer members go on and buy product, and then they have really just an amazing aggregation logistics feat of bringing all these products from all these producers together and then customizing each of those orders and then getting them out to around 43 drop-off sites across the state. And this model has been replicated quite successfully. In fact, I think since last looking at their site, where they list other folks who are doing something similar, it's about 20 or so of these online buying clubs using this cooperative structure have emerged across the country. So pretty neat. The next thing I just want to really quickly go through is there was some interesting stuff that came out of the National Food Hub Survey from 2013 that the Wallace Center and the Michigan State University Center for Regional Food Systems did. And one of the things that was quite interesting was looking at kind of the financial health of food hubs. And one of the ways to kind of categorize or classify that is with the business efficiency ratio, which is simply just expenses over revenue. Are you bringing in more revenue than your overall costs and the expenses to your business? And they see that, like, through the sample of food hubs that filled out the survey, that generally speaking, it was slightly over the business efficiency ratio with 1.07, which means that the revenue was a bit less than the expenses of the food hub. However, when they took a little deeper look and removed a couple outliers, it actually goes a little bit below, which actually shows pretty good financial health. What was particularly nice to see, particularly those who are friends of cooperatives, is that they were the only one with the outlier still in there that still had an efficiency ratio below, meaning they were financially viable or profitable businesses. And again, it's just one type of indicator. It's not the only indicator of financial health, but it's an easy one to be able to quantify and get a sense of. But just generally speaking overall, I think this is also important just to mention that there is I think actually a misperception that food hubs are heavily reliant on grants to fund their core operations. And if you take the question here about half don't rely on grants at all and 32% somewhat, and within that question what they were actually asked is, could you actually run your core operations of aggregation, distribution, marketing without any external assistance? And actually the answer was yes. And so you have a vast majority, 80% or so of the food hubs across the country that could do their core operations. But of course they do rely on grants because it allows them to do a lot of the other production and community services that help in many ways define them as an organization. And then lastly, just wanted to say the impacts of food hubs have been immense. Based partially on the survey, we know that annual sales have exceeded 3.7 million. They bring in 19 paid employees. And if you look at the average number of producers that food hubs work with, well over 12,000 producers are marketing their products and being served by food hubs across the country. I wanted to bring this up. It's a related USDA initiative. It's the Group GAP initiative. It's the opportunity for groups to get certified under good agricultural practices. Western Montana Growers Cooperative is actually one of the pilot groups that we're working with, and Carl and Jan are intimately involved in this. And if there are some questions about this particular initiative, we can certainly take those online as well as offline. But there is a nice blog there that you can click that gives you more information about where we are in that process. And here are just some resources about food hubs that we have written at USDA. The last one was published by Rural Development, the first two by Agricultural Marketing Service, and just really talk about the different business model, lessons learned, best practices, and resources to support their development. And there's also websites. The USDA has a dedicated website to food hubs, and then the Wallace Center, one of our longtime partners in food hubs, has a great website with really fantastic webinars. Not as good as this one, but pretty good. And that's it for me. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And since I'm the moderator, I'm going to say, well, thanks, Jim. Well, you're welcome, Jim. Now, as a moderator, we're going to move over to Margaret, who is going to walk us through her kind of lessons learned from the field in developing cooperatives. So welcome, Margaret.
Thank you, Jim, and happy Co-op Month, everyone. Yes, I'm Margaret Bow. I have had the pleasure of working to help organize cooperatives across my home state of Wisconsin for the last 16 years. And I wanted to share with you a couple of examples of local food initiatives that are cooperatives, and then share with you 3 lessons that we've learned along the way. So one of the things that Jim mentioned is that cooperatives can very well serve a number of roles. And when it comes to local food, I think co-ops do very well the role of aggregation, which is needed. Oftentimes when it comes to local foods, they tend to be smaller in scale, and in order to meet the demand, you do need to aggregate. So with cooperatives, when it comes to local foods, it can be as relatively simple as a group community-supported agriculture cooperative initiative. And I have an example there from central Wisconsin called the Auburndale Food Cooperative. Auburndale is a small town of about 2,000 people, and it is a group of 12 growers. Most of them are organic or naturally raised. Several are Amish growers. And what they have created is a weekly online ordering system and people can order by Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. And there's not a standard box of goods that will be distributed. You can choose online what you would like to have. And then there are several drop-off sites around the region in 5 small cities across central Wisconsin. It's relatively small, it's efficient, it's rather elegant, and it's serving the needs well in central Wisconsin. And then at another end of the scale, you can get as complex as a multi-stakeholder cooperative. And when we use that term multi-stakeholder, what we mean that there are multiple membership groups within that cooperative. Traditionally in the United States, we have tended to have homogeneous membership groups. For instance, we would have just a consumer co-op, or we have a co-op of just the producers. Well, in the case of a multi-stakeholder co-op, such as the Fifth Season Cooperative, which is in the southwest part of Wisconsin, serving also northeastern Iowa and southeastern Minnesota, we have 6 membership classes that cover all aspects of rebuilding the local food system in that region. Everything from the producers to producer groups to processors to transportation to workers and to the buyers, institutional buyers as well. And that particular group has started out more in a broker role to getting local food into regional hospitals, nursing homes, the school districts. But now they are starting to evolve into a value-added role. We are in Wisconsin, and our growing season tends to be a little bit limited. So this particular group is getting involved with taking some of the seconds, especially of the produce, and one of the producer members has the ability to do IQF, or individual quick frozen food, and they are creating 2 different medley blends of winter potatoes or root crops, and for institutional purposes. And that's been an exciting adventure. Another example of the multi-stakeholder is the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative, a little bit more recent, and they're also playing the broker role of getting food, locally grown food, into regional grocers. They have gone more the grocer route rather than the institutional route. And so they are getting food into regional grocery stores, into the Cisco food distribution system, and into some high-end stores in the Milwaukee and Chicago areas. So that's pretty exciting. So I just wanted to stress that there is a range that you can use the cooperative model. It can be relatively simple, or it can be complex. I want to share with you a number of lessons learned, and I'm going to pull some lessons learned also from a co-op that unfortunately is no longer in operation. This particular co-op, called the Producers and Buyers Co-op, was an early venture here in our state with getting local food into hospitals and other institutions. And it was operated from about 2009 until 2011. So it's important as food hubs move forward, as we get more involved with local foods, to learn not only from the successes but also to document some of the failures. So before you begin, or as you move forward with your local food ventures, I'd like to share with you 3 lessons from the field of cooperative development. And the first lesson would be to honestly assess the motivations of the people that will become members of this cooperative. For instance, especially if you are getting involved with a multi-stakeholder cooperative where you're going to have multiple membership groups, it's important to really think through and talk openly at the beginning of why you are getting involved with this, what are your experiences, and what are you looking for out of being in a cooperative. One of the hard lessons that we have learned is that food hubs especially are not necessarily for all farmers. people need to be reminded that when it comes to food hubs, we are talking about wholesale pricing. We are talking about wholesale distribution. This is not the realm of retail. This is not the realm of a farmer's market where you can expect a retail price. Also, another lesson that has been learned is that you need to work with farmers that are already experienced in what they are doing, either as a farmer themselves or experienced in the products that they are going to market through the cooperative. For instance, we had a situation in which a young person relatively new to farming had promised, he had a greenhouse and he was trying to grow tomatoes, and the food hub was rather dependent upon him for tomatoes for distribution. Well, he was learning, and so there wasn't always ready tomatoes for the group, and that really hurt in the initial relationships that the co-op was trying to build with the institutional buyers. Another lesson, if you are including institutions in a food hub, there needs to be a very honest assessment of why are you in this? Because quite frankly, local food will cost more. There is not the subsidy, there may not be the economies of scale that may keep the cost as low as food that is being trucked in from all over the country. So an institution may want to select what are the items that will give the biggest bang for the buck, that they're willing to invest in, that, for instance, locally grown eggs may actually produce more quantity of baked goods because they're, of all the good things that happen with very fresh eggs. An institution needs to really assess, why are they doing this? Is it for food traceability? Is it for nutrition or health value? Or quite honestly, is this kind of a public relations ability that they're trying to do? And maybe involvement in a food hub isn't the right mix for that. Maybe they would be better served by sponsoring a CSA or having a farmer's market in their parking lot. Quite frankly, one of the lessons we've learned is you can't be everything to everyone. The second lesson I would like to share with you is that when you are about to go into a venture in local foods and in food hubs, you need to raise sufficient capital before you actually launch. It's very tempting to say, let's just do something. And here in Wisconsin, we're in a northern climate, and oftentimes I've been with groups that we get to February, March, April, and people get antsy. Let's just do something because otherwise we're going to be busy all summer, we're going to be busy into the fall, and we're going to lose an entire year. Let's just get started. And I would suggest, please do a thorough equity drive. Really think through, do a good feasibility study, do a good business plan, think through what money do you need, and then take the patience and have the patience to actually raise that capital. And if you can't raise the funds, that may be telling you something, and you need to listen to that lesson. The third lesson I'd like to share is the importance of hiring an experienced manager. I have seen several groups try to get by on the cheap and to hire someone that isn't experienced or to hire someone very, very part-time, thinking that, well, we can grow an individual into being that manager. Food, when it comes to food marketing, distribution, it's complex. There are definite skills, there are definite abilities that people need to have. They need to have experience. And with your initial venture, this is not the place to grow someone into that position. You really need to raise the funds in order to be able to pay someone that has experience to start off your venture, because personnel issues will cost you time and money in the long run. So with that, I'd like to stress what works. Why go through the process of forming a cooperative in order to aggregate, distribute, and market local food? Because co-ops are very good a coordinator as that coordination point. From the perspective of the buyers, be they institutional buyers or be it individual consumers, people are looking for a single point of contact. It's very time consuming. It's very confusing to have multiple trucks from 10 different farms all showing up at the loading dock of a school district or of a hospital. It can be rather confusing for individual consumers to try to figure out who they would like to buy potatoes or tomatoes from. And then on the flip side, the producers, they're good at production. They're good at raising whatever they are growing. They want to focus on production, and a food hub can enable them to really focus in on that. So co-ops can assure a level of quality. As I mentioned several times already, they're very good at aggregating product, and they can follow through on the delivery and the invoicing, which is so important to getting to scale. So thank you for the opportunity to share some of the lessons that we've learned here, and I look forward to hearing what the other speakers have to share.
Well, thank you so much, Margaret. Just chock full of really great lessons there. Really appreciate it. And certainly I hear a lot of similar things with other food hub businesses that get started, and well, we're going to have to align our forces together and get a lot of more of this information out to folks. Just great stuff. And I think Jan, who's going to be talking to us next, is also has been in the cooperative development field for a very long time, and I'm sure there's going to be some parallels and some overlap. So with that, Jan, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, James, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this webinar. And thank you for all of those who are participating. I just went through the list. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's quite a few people logged on, so this is great. Well, I'm Jan Tusick, and I'm the Center Director for the Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center. And we are a part of a regional economic development organization that is focused on value-added agriculture in the state of Montana. We are part of the Montana Department of Agriculture's Food and Ag Center program. And more importantly, we've been a cooperative development center in this work since 1999. I'm looking for my little arrow. There we go. So really our mission is an economic development-based mission. We are committed to providing client services to value-added agriculture and specialty food businesses through our cooperative development program, and we operate a community-based shared use food processing facilities. So we are unique in the aspect that we do food processing within our program area, and we work with numerous especially food businesses and also cooperatives. And you'll be hearing from the main cooperative that we work with, which is Western Montana Growers Co-op, and Carl Sutton will be speaking on that later. So what do we do in the area of food system development? We have been focused in food system development since prior 2000. We always saw it as a critical economic development strategy within our region and the state of Montana. So we have, through cooperative models, focused on food hub development. We're now involved in Group GAP, and we launched a farm to institution program about 5 years ago, and we're looking at new cooperative models in the area of food banks. And Montana has a strong food bank network that we are starting to explore, which we'll talk about further. So in our food hub development, what kind of cooperatives have we been working with? Western Montana Growers Co-op, which Carl will talk in depth about, is a marketing distribution cooperative with approximately, Carl probably knows the exact number, 40-something members in the cooperative. We also are exploring cooperative formation with a processing cooperative in the Bozeman area, Root Cellar Foods, and we've been providing, over the last 5 years, some assistance to an online food co-op. So all of them are playing this food hub role of aggregation and bringing local food together to a common point and distributing it out in numerous different ways. So Carl can talk about Western Montana Growers Cooperative and how they do that. The Montana Co-op is, again, this online model, which they have a consumer-producer membership base and are trying to coordinate those together to effectively move food throughout mainly the western Montana region. Root Cellars is unique in that they're a newly established food processing center. They just launched this last year. We've been working with members in that group for probably the last 4 years exploring the idea. And so they really are looking at right now a retail market on where they can process local farmers' food and enter those local markets. And most of their local markets right now that they're targeting are cooperatives. So I love that cooperative-to-cooperative connection, which is one of the key principles of cooperatives, is how we can work together. And so that's really exciting to see that development. So what are some of the key outcomes that these groups have developed? The West Montana Growers Co-op, I think, is just very unique in showing a success of a co-op that's aggregating and distributing their members' products across the state. Montana's a big state, so it's a challenge to begin with. They have many miles to travel to really reach their marketplaces, and so for them to have a profit, reach profit, is just, in our opinion, just a great model for rural communities. We also have worked with them since their inception, which is in 2000. We believe the biggest lesson that we feel in their development was we were able to bring the capacity of coordination to the table. We were able to fund a coordinator that could work directly with that co-op and help them in those beginning years. And that was so important because it didn't rely on a fragmented volunteer base. The Montana Co-op is really struggling with that scenario right now. It's very difficult to really move forward in a business model when you're based on volunteers. And we really try, when we work with these co-ops, is how can we help them build that capacity to get that core staff person, you call it coordinator, you can call it manager, on board, that they can really get some legs on the ground and make things happen. And in today's world, it's a challenge to ask people to volunteer that level of capacity and time. So I think of all the lessons I've learned in working with these groups, that one is really important, that, let's get them where they have a paid person who can really, really move the business forward. The next one in the area of food safety is the Group GAP pilot project that USDA, AMS, and the Wallace Center are launching. We are in partnership with Western Montana Growers Co-op as one of the 6 pilot sites across the nation. And this has been really a big step forward for Western Montana growers. I must say a challenging step forward. GAP, when you just look at the requirements of GAP, I think the small-scale producer does have some barriers to meeting those requirements and needs quite a bit of assistance to move forward to meet GAP requirements. So for us, the Group GAP program really is bringing some resources to the table, and also in a cooperative manner, creating an umbrella that producers can be incubated in their GAP and GAP planning, and that is all coordinated together in the cooperative that will meet the marketplace needs. We're very excited about where this can go. We are in our first year and have identified 6 producer members that are committed to have their on-farm food safety plans in place this year. We're hoping by January. And that the umbrella quality management system that the co-op has total ownership of, that those farm plans fit in, will be completed by November 2014. These are big steps for this group. So what kind of technical resources need to be brought to the table? You need to bring training and internal audits, because the co-op needs to perform that themselves. We need to be able to have the producer, owners of the co-op, fully understand GAP, so GAP training is really important. We need to have systems understanding when you're developing a quality management system. So these are areas that our center is working with the co-op and bringing that kind of technical assistance to the table so we can help them be successful in this. Lessons learned in this is GAP can be most people say a 3-letter word. How about a three vowel word? It sometimes sets producers off, and it can be a very negative connotation to it. So we've worked really hard to try to build the understanding of the why behind GAP and why it's beneficial for producers to go down this path and be successful in it. So, that's something that if anyone goes into this area, we'd be happy to, with the Wallace Center is a tremendous resource, and that they are looking at expanding these pilot sites next year to compass more food hub groups. So there's great opportunity here for people to explore this further. In our farm to institution area, which I mentioned earlier, is we do a farm to institution program, and it has many facets. The key one that we are working with are taking our local produce to school systems, and the growers co-op is the key piece to that. They are the grower, they are the distributor, and they are the marketer. Well, we are the processor, but we're acting more and more as a liaison between the schools and the cooperative. We've accessed the National Food Corps program, which I always like to remind people started in the state of Montana. But it's an amazing program that is now national. But these are VISTA volunteers that work directly. They're housed in the schools, and they're able to work directly with us or the Growers Co-op in getting local food to those school systems. Key outcomes is we're processing a lot of produce. Last year, 54,000 pounds was processed from the Growers Co-op, and it was I like to equate it to revenue stream. It was almost a 30% increase to their revenue stream for the co-op. And for us as a food processor on our food processing footprint, it was equal to about 25% increase in revenue, which means we got to bring on more people to process. We created jobs. It was a success for both partners. And so we are really excited about how this program is going to grow, and the next step is to explore further schools across the state and to look at hospitals and other institutions and how we can best serve them. I will weigh in again on the lessons learned is that our role as a liaison I think will still become more and more important. And that education and outreach on both sides, on the producer side and the school side, is critical so people really understand the benefit of farm to school or farm to institution. And it has so many layers of benefit that we feel real strong that people should understand that a little deeply rather than just the price. Our new project that we're exploring, which is going to be a very unique food hub, is really looking at what is the opportunity of creating a statewide cooperative of satellite food hubs that would link into the food bank network. Montana has an extensive food bank network that goes to the smallest rural communities in the far eastern reaches of Montana, bringing food to those people within those communities. And it's a unique opportunity for us to collaborate together and looking at what are the distribution needs that the food hub, the food bank network has an amazing distribution capacity. How can they partner with other distributors, and how can we as food processors, our center, Root Cellars Food Processing Center, how can we help add some value to that product so it can have longer shelf life into those communities that have increasing food needs. So we're excited about this project. I think it's going to be probably a year in the making before we start really getting some definition and roads passed. But I think it's a need that has come up that these communities are asking for. So we're looking at how can we best respond. And so with that, I thank you for the opportunity to be part of this and welcome any questions. People can email me, visit our website. We have a really fun farm to school video that I think you'd get a kick out of if you want to watch that. And thank you.
Great, Jan, thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. And I'm going to take this opportunity someone had a question that I think either you, Jan, or Margaret can probably answer, certainly better than me. And that has to do with, let me see if I can find it real quickly here. Does the USDA or its partners assist with guidance on legal agreement and contractual side of farmers cooperative? So maybe, Margaret, do you want to take a stab at that first?
Yes, either a co-op development specialist or one of the co-op development centers. Oftentimes they have staff that have experience with that and may have some templates available of projects they've worked on with other groups to assist you with that. Jan, any thoughts?
I would echo that. We've assisted almost every co-op we've worked with. We've assisted them in their legal structuring, and if there was a need to bring in legal advice, we brought that in on behalf of for the co-op to get some specific legal questions answered if they needed it. But we have templates, we have examples. But then it's so important that that cooperative definitely looks at their needs, what structure best fits them, and then from there make their core decisions in developing those legal papers.
Right. Thank you. And also I should say we have a listing at the end under co-op resources of this presentation in which we highlight a number of the cooperative development centers across the country and how you can access those if you're looking for that type of technical assistance and support. So because we're getting close to time here, I want to make sure we get through our last two fantastic presenters. So we're going to turn it over to Carl, and he's going to tell us about his cooperative, producer cooperative.
Thanks, James. So Western Montana Growers Co-op, as Jan stated, is a producer-owned marketing and distribution cooperative. The concept began in the early 2000s, and by 2003 we incorporated with 6 producer owners, and our first year sales were about $10,000. By 2008, 2009, our producer membership grew to about 20 producers with about $500,000 in sales. And today we're looking at 40 producers with currently over $1 million in sales, and we're on pace to exceed last year's sales of $1.4 million. As you can see on this map here, we have membership distribution spread out throughout Western Montana. From the furthest northern producer all the way to the furthest southern producer, we're looking at greater than 125 miles between those producers. So for Western Montana Growers Co-op, one of the advantages of my farm and other farms is that we have a fleet of 3 trucks. And so it is the Growers Co-op that can bring efficiency to this very spread out producer base and be able to reach our markets. So our membership on this chart shows that we have about 11 of our growers produce the vast majority of our product that we sell. And you'll see on here that we have about a third of our growers have less than 6 years of experience in marketing. And one of the advantages that our co-op provides is that, one, for our markets we have stability because we have growers that have been growing either produce or growing or raising cows, and so that stability and that quality is brought to the marketplace. But at the same time, the co-op provides the advantage of new growers like my farm that has about 3 years of experience. It allows us to enter markets that we wouldn't normally be able to enter. So our production, given we're located in Montana, we offer a full plate of products. Predominantly 80% of our production is certified organic or is homegrown, which is an alternative to organic certification in Missoula Valley. And our products, we sell about half of our product is fruits and vegetables, followed by dairy products and eggs. We also offer a multi-farm CSA, which contributes to about 10% of our sales. And the importance of that CSA is that it provides us startup money in the slow season in the spring. So our markets are very spread out across the state. One of our core markets is Missoula, which is about 35 minutes from our home office to the south. But we also offer markets in the upper northwest part of the state. And then we offer markets all the way east to Billings, which is a good 300 miles from our. You can look on this slide and see our sales by customer type in 2013. And the vast majority of our sales go to natural food stores and grocery stores. And again, looking on here, you can see that our CSA contribution is about 10%. You'll see that the institutional markets, which Jan pointed to, have been a growing area in our co-op. We process, as Jan said, we process frozen products, particularly sweet cherries and butternut squash that we sell throughout the year. But we also work on fresh processed products for schools, in particular in their fresh fruit and vegetable programs. So for those schools that can't cut, slice, and dice carrots, we ship our carrots to Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center, where they process them. Then they go back in our truck and go to the particular school. And it's becoming a very valuable partnership that we have with the processing center up in Ronan. So our operations, we currently, as I had said, we're located in a small town in Arlee, Montana. Our warehouse is on a farm. It's about 3,000 square feet with about 300 feet of cooler space. It's in a barn structure, and at this point we've far outgrown the capacity of that particular field. So our current work right now as a board of directors has been to develop a strategy for moving Western Montana Growers Co-op to a new warehouse space. And we currently have a lease on a space in Missoula that is about 5,000 square feet and will triple our cooler space and offer us coolers that will be zone cooling so that we can retain quality and freshness. We've been raising funds both internally within the co-op for the renovation of the space, as well as seeking outside financing for the renovations. And one of the really exciting features of this move is that we're moving right next to a consumer co-op in a space called the Burn Street Commons that is it's in a low-income part of Missoula. And so we're going to have the opportunity to create some co-op-to-co-op relationships with that Missoula Food Co-op and create some education and promotion about why co-ops are so valuable and important to our communities. You'll see on this slide we use a web-based management system for our sales, where retailers can go online and see live what products are available. Our operations, we have 2 sale days a week on Mondays and Thursdays, where myself as a producer offer what I have available, and then the retailers see live what's available, and our marketers communicate with those retailers the sales. It's, again, one of the advantages that the co-op brings to me is that I have 2 marketers available to me selling products. And also, because I am a very small acreage farm, I can't produce necessarily the volume that will meet some of these larger buyers. So being able to aggregate with other producers in this co-op, we can meet the market needs. This web development occurred about 2008. Prior to that, our sales teams were shouting down the halls at each other, and using spreadsheets to count down box totals while growers were calling them, telling them what they had. So this was an important development for our co-op, which we had custom built for us early on. And you'll see here, again, I stated that we have a fleet of 3 trucks that move our product pretty seamlessly throughout our large state. And in closing, this was our manager found this saying at a Chinese restaurant. It says, "Cooperation will work better." Thank you.
Carl, thank you so much. I love that when you sent me your slide deck and I saw that was your last slide. That was awesome. It was great to hear from you, Carl, and we're running some short on time, so I'm going to go directly into Robin, and then there should be a few minutes for a couple of questions after we hear from Robin. So Robin, welcome.
Hi.
And
hi, everybody.
Look forward to hearing your conversation.
Hi, everybody. So I'll whip through this just as fast as I can. These are our brand marks. La Montanita Co-op started in 1976, and we, with 300 members, we now have, whoa, why am I having a hard time here? We now have 17,000 members, and we're going to pay a patronage refund to 19,000 families throughout New Mexico. We have 6 stores. Oh, I'm not used to this. I'm on a different, just hit that one? Okay. We have 17, we're going to pay a patronage refund to 17,000 members throughout the state. This is our Nob Hill store. This is our Valley store. This is our North Valley Produce, you can see, our Santa Fe store, our Gallup store, which is really exciting to be out in Gallup. It's a low-income community. Is everybody seeing everything okay? Seeing the slides go by? Yeah? Hello?
We can hear you fine and well. Keep going. You're doing great.
And the slides. Okay, great. So here's our University of New Mexico Grab and Go, and our new West Side location.
Wait,
so,
actually, I'm not sure if you are advancing the slides. Right now,
okay.
I have slide 59.
Okay, so here's 61. This is the Nob Hill. This is the Nob Hill, the North Valley.
Do you want me to advance your
slides? Is that advancing now? North Valley location?
Yeah, you're good.
Santa Fe. Okay, great. I'm good. Gallup. University of New Mexico in the bookstore, which is really exciting. We work with the Sustainability Studies Department to get that going, and our new location on the west side. So our food shed initiative started because we had to figure out, as competition really came into the community, how to keep our consumer co-op viable and relevant in the community. We started our food shed initiative. We see our local area as a 300-mile radius around Albuquerque because, like Montana, we have very vast spaces in between. We only have 2 million people in the whole state. So we travel far distances, and it's really hard sometimes to make those distances, make it pay and make it be good, cost effective. We started our distribution center, our Co-op distribution center in 2006. We rented our first warehouse, which was 11,000 square feet. We pretty soon realized that to get to the economy of scale that we needed to really do what we wanted to do for the community as a co-op, we needed more space. This is Michelle receiving one of our first trucks. And we do sell a variety of national brands that help cover the overhead so that we can do the work that we want to do in the local communities, things that we will never make in New Mexico, maple syrup, paper products, a variety of things that come from out of state. We try and buy from other co-ops as much as possible, and that really helps cover the overhead. We originally, when we went to the board and asked to do the food hub development work, we thought we would invest about $150,000 over 3 years. and then be solvent. Well, 7 years later and over almost $1 million later of community funds that we raised by doing good business at our 6 local stores, that's what it took to really get going. And now, now we have a new warehouse that has, I'm sorry if this is a little oversized in your computer screen, 18,000 square feet with 2,832 square feet of cooler space, 1,152 square feet of freezer space. In the last fiscal year, we purchased from 200 local producers from around the state. That's just through the Co-op Food Hub. We have about another 200 local producers that sell direct to the stores, very small producers, maybe come in with a basket or two. The Food Hub project sells to over 100 grocery stores, cafes, restaurants, and institutional buyers around the state. And this year we did $5.55 million in sales, which was, we were shooting for $5 million as our break even. Really, for us, it's about developing relationships with our local food suppliers and producers. This is Scott Rasband. We started just selling his milk in 1 store. The Food Hub has now allowed us to sell his food throughout his dairy throughout the state, and really increased his on-farm income so that his wife Jean no longer has to have an off-farm job, which is one of the key points that we're trying to do for our local producers. We now pick up his milk every other day and distribute it throughout the state, take it down to the Silver City Co-op, take it down to the Mountain View Co-op, up to Taos Co-op, so co-ops all around the state. The Old Windmill Dairy is another one of our Food Hub success stories. We realized early on that there was a glut on the market in the spring of fresh goat milk here in New Mexico, depressing prices to farmers. We really wanted to improve their income in the spring, and so we helped Old Windmill Dairy create a cheese aging cave to create the first aged goat cheeses in New Mexico, and that's the kind of value chain development that we think is really important. What it does is at a time when they are not milking their goats, they now have cheese to sell in December, January, February, before the fresh milk comes in each year, and that's the kind of development that we really like to see. We help them build this cheese aging cave and this processing plant. We also helped them buy a truck recently, and you'll see a picture of that later on. Again, we really work a lot with a lot of local producers, trying to make sure that we build strong relationships and really provide access to markets, help with branding throughout the process of helping them develop their markets and their brands. Sweetgrass Beef Co-op is another one of the really fun projects that we did. We helped 11 ranchers put together an agricultural producer co-op because we realized that 95% of all the beef that's eaten in New Mexico comes from out of state, which was absolutely insane when we had this huge beef industry here, but the processing and the marketing was not happening appropriately, so we helped this co-op develop. And part of the importance of that is to develop the market. So we have 2 salespeople as part of our Food Hub project that go and develop the markets for these folks. And this is just some of the marketing materials that we've developed for them to take around with them, for us to send to prospective purchasers of the product. And we really focused on a center of the plate protein project that includes beef, lamb, eggs, beans, grains as much as possible, so that people who we sell to throughout the community can, it's almost like a full service distribution center, but really with a focus on these wonderful local and, as you can see, Organic Valley, organically produced products and co-op produced products. We are the main distributor in New Mexico for Organic Valley products, and that's one of the national brands that we do bring in to New Mexico and and produce there. This is again still that information sheet to really let people know what the brands are, who we represent, and really push their products out into the community to maximize sales and farm income for folks. More information there. So Jim asked me to talk a little bit about the La Montanita Fund. We realized that access to capital was one of the key areas in which farmers and local producers really needed help to expand, to grow the local food system. And so we created a grassroots investing co-op that does microloans to farmers throughout the state. We now have about $142,000 in investments from 70 area residents. This gives you a little information about how it works. All of this information is available on our website too. Over the past 3 years, we have, in a revolving loan fund, lent out over $150,000 in loans to area producers to help them scale up. And we work really closely with folks who get NRCS grants because they have to provide the capital to do the work for their NRCS grant and then get inspected and then get repaid for that investment. And many of our farmers, both young and old, don't have that kind of capital just sitting around waiting. So we provide that capital for them, and then they pay us back when they get their NRCS grant. So we work with the New Mexico Educators Federal Credit Union. That's a wonderful co-op to co-op collaboration that really helps, and it's been a really great project for us. La Montanita invests $25,000 every year in the offering, and because we know that farming is a high-risk investment, especially with climate change, we take the hit first rather than our grassroots investors should there be a default. We have had in the past 4 years one default for $3,000, which is really not bad at all given that we have provided that $150,000 in loans. These are some of our loan criteria, but we really work with people who don't meet all of these criteria to make sure that that capital is available to folks and to really help them work through the process, get good credit ratings by giving them long lead times before they have to start paying back those loans, and sometimes as much as 6 months when their crop comes in, then they would then start the repayment process. More of the loan criteria, our fair lending standards, and it's really important to us, even though this is nurture capital and patient capital that some people call, we really want to be able to show our investors that investing in the local food system and investing in the local economy will give them maybe not a great return, but will always give them some sort of financial reward, as well as knowing who they're invested in, what farms they are invested in, and then when they see those products on our co-op shelves, being able to purchase those products and really feel that circle of soil, farm, consumer, investor, all the way around. So that whole, creating that circle was really important to us in this project. Here again is Old Windmill Dairy. We helped them buy this truck. They really couldn't get a loan anywhere else at a reasonable price, and that's one of the exciting things about the La Montanita Fund. It is it's like a signature loan. It's non-collateralized. We would never take somebody's farm away in the case of default, and we give really good rates on the loan fund. So here's some information. I would be really happy to talk to anybody if you wanted to do something like this in your state, and you're welcome to. All our material is up on our website. And it is really wonderful to be here with you and all the co-op expertise that has been on this website. And we're looking forward to working with everybody and seeing how much we can grow co-ops in the coming years. So that was sort of quick and dirty, but thanks to you all for staying online.
Thanks, Robin. That was awesome. And it was a lot to digest, and I've already been sending the slide deck out to folks so they can spend a little more time with the full presentation. So I do want to turn over. We're going to wrap up with some resources available for local food projects as well as for co-ops. And so I'll turn it back to Eleanor.
All right, and I'm going to be very quick so we can get to some of your questions. But going back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation about the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative here at USDA, one big piece of our work is getting information out to you all about all of the programs that exist across the whole department that can assist at various points along the supply chain for local foods. So if you go to our website, and you'll see the URL there down at the bottom, it's also accessible from our USDA homepage. A couple of resources I want to point out for you. One is our grants and loans page, and this really goes, as I said, across the whole department. There's probably 30 or so different grants and loans that, and we give you an explanation of what it's for, an example of how it has been used for a local food project, and information on how to apply. So that's a great resource there. This is just a graphic of the supply chain with some examples of some of the key programs from USDA, just to highlight that there are quite a lot of them and touches every point along the supply chain. Another tool that we've got on our website is called the Compass Map, and this was where we went out and looked at those 30 or so grant and loan programs that we have here at USDA, and we mapped investments through those programs since 2009 across the country. And then we added other data like the locations of farmers markets and food hubs and other things that we gather here as a department, even though we're not necessarily giving money to all of those things. That's all on the map as well. And then last year we actually added projects and resources from 9 other federal departments. And we were pretty shocked to see how involved other parts of the federal government are in local foods, and very excited by that. That data is not complete, and we update it fairly regularly. Our next update is going to happen in January, and we'll be doing a lot of sort of new things with the map and with the data. But it's a great way to just hone in on what's happening in your own community. And you can also, and so here is an example of looking at Pennsylvania, finding out about a project that's supporting a food hub, a project that is helping train small and mid-sized growers on food safety gap certification. These are the types of things that as a co-op you would probably be interested in knowing about. And you can find that all on the map. And this graphic just shows what, when you click on one of those dots, all the information that pops up about it. You can also search the map by keyword to find, so if you're, for example, interested in figuring out how does USDA support cold storage, because this is a big need for my growers. You can put that into the map. It'll pop up with a list of projects we've supported that have that term in the description. And you can talk to people in other parts of the country and see what they're doing. You can see which program from USDA supported that project, and just learn a little bit more about the resources that are out there. So that's all. Turning it back to Jim.
All right, great. And just I want to highlight a few USDA co-op resources. So I sit in the cooperative programs within rural development, and I'm part of a fairly good-sized staff of professionals that carry out research, provide educational trainings and technical assistance and grant support to co-ops across the country. So I really encourage you to check out our main website on co-op programs. And one of the other sites available is a really massive library of over 150 publications related to cooperatives, and then we also have our Rural Cooperatives magazine that maybe some of you are familiar with. And we have everything from introductory work like Co-ops 101 and how to start a cooperative to more sophisticated manuals and publications on financing, governance, and those types of things. So I encourage you to check out our sites. And then thanks, a little shout out to Margaret Bow, because she really helped put together a number of additional resources available for co-op development. One example, and of course since Margaret's from Wisconsin, she did want to share the University of Wisconsin Center for Cooperatives, one of the cooperative development centers across the nation. They have a lot of really cool resources there. Obviously, Wisconsin was one of the great leaders of co-op development in the country. But there's a lot of other co-op development centers across the country, and you can find those by looking either at the list at USDA, in which we funded a number of these centers, as well as if you go to Cooperation Works. an organization that works with co-op development centers and practitioners across the country, and they have listings of these centers that you'll be able to get direct technical assistance and business support from. We had a question. One of the questions was from a group in Oregon that is trying to get off the ground and is facing some roadblocks in terms of registering their business as a cooperative. And, Margaret, just to kind of answer that question really quickly, isn't there a Cooperative Development Center in Oregon?
Actually, contact the Northwest Cooperative Development Center in Olympia, Washington. They do cover Oregon, and they are top-notch. You'll get some good help.
Thank you very, very much. I knew you would have an answer to that. And then moving on to there's a lot of other national organizations, initiatives out there to support co-op development, and we've listed some of the key ones here. Even the National Young Farmers Coalition has been working with co-ops. And actually, Mark, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I thought that was kind of an interesting relationship between these young farmers and co-op movement.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The National Young Farmers Coalition is for people in their 20s and 30s that didn't necessarily grow up on a farm but want to get into farming, as well as for people that are new to farming, regardless of their age. And they have paired up with the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops in order to do some good learning and cross-training. The U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops is doing some amazing things across the country with worker co-ops. It's fascinating to see those two organizations work together.
Great, and thanks, Margaret. And I encourage you to check out all these sites as well as the other information we have provided. And my treat is a little cartoon to close things out, which is Happy Halloween, and then, of course, the cartoon, if you can see it, the witches standing around their brews saying, "I only use local children. I only eat local food." Anyway. I appreciate everyone's patience and attention, and I'm sorry that we've run over, but I do want to have 5 minutes of questions. I hope our presenters can stick around. If you can't, I understand. So if I ask you to try to answer a question and you're not there, that's fine. We'll just move on. But one of the questions that I thought was really interesting, and I was hoping maybe one of our presenters might be able to answer it, has to do with co-ops in urban areas. Let me see if I can bring it up. So the question was, can someone speak more about, first, experience with urban-based cooperative and the challenges, opportunities in that context? And secondly, what are some effective branding strategies for a co-op given a diversity of growers? So kind of two questions, but do any of our presenters want to kind of tackle that issue, if there's any kind of distinct challenges, opportunities for urban-based cooperatives versus rural-based?
This is as a rural development center and living in Montana, we have very little experience with urban cooperatives.
This
Margaret,
is Robin.
This
is Robin at La Montanita, and we started off in the center of Albuquerque, and most of our consumer storefronts are based in cities. We draw from the producers around that area, that region, to bring that product into the city. We really market as the ownership model, the co-op ownership model, to be sure that people really understand the difference between like the Costco model, which is not an ownership model. And so we're really looking at that difference in the cooperative economic model in our marketing and branding, and how we educate the community in terms of that. I'm not sure if that really answered the question, but
you might want to contact a few of the co-op development centers, such as the Keystone Co-op Development Center serving Pennsylvania. They've done quite a bit of work in Philadelphia. Some of the other co-op centers as well, though some of them are really serving rural areas, a lot of them do have an urban base to them.
Great, thanks. Just want to see if anyone else wanted to chime in. So I had another question here, and I'm trying to sort through it to see if I can find it. I see we had a few technical issues a while there, but we're hanging in there. So this was a question, and we'll see if our presenters may be able to answer it. I may try to shoot in too, but it was about what can local food policy councils do to support or advocate for cooperatives in their communities to increase local procurement for institutions?
I'd like to respond to that. This is Jan.
Yeah, sure.
We've been actively involved with a policy council, Grow Montana, and that council has been really important in changing state policy and making more farm-to-school programs available and supported by the state. Right now, some outcomes have been that we worked on some laws that made it possible to use mobile units in the state of Montana when there were barriers before. We now have a farm-to-school coordinator within the Office of Public Instruction due to the work of that council, which is going to be a direct benefit to anyone doing farm-to-school, whether it's school-based or organizations such as ourselves in the co-op. So, yeah, they've been critical to helping pass, identifying and changing policy that can be barriers.
This is Robin at La Montanita, and I want to second that. And we've worked really extensively with our food policy councils here in New Mexico. We've done actually distribution in their farm-to-school program and their farm-to-restaurant programs to help get that going, and really see them working so hard on the legislative level to change policy, to make sure there's added funds so that the public school systems don't have to take the lowest bid, but that there's an increase that they're allowed to give to purchase local food, to pay a fair price for the local products to the farmers. And so it's really a great collaboration for co-ops and food policy councils to work together.
Great. Thanks, Robin. Also, thank you, Jan. And I think we're going to have to close out the session, but I like how it ended with that because it just so happens this is also Farm to School Month along with National Cooperative Month, and there was obviously a nice little overlap there between the two. So again, I want to thank all my presenters today, Eleanor, Margaret, Jan, Carl, Robin. You guys are all fantastic. I've already started to shoot the slides out to folks. We will have this recorded, and we're trying to figure out how we'll be able to post this. So the best place to look for this webinar will be on the Cooperative Programs landing page that I shared with you a bit earlier. If you just Google USDA Rural Development Cooperative Programs, that will bring you to that page as well. And hopefully we'll have this webinar as well as some of our future webinars to come. So again, thanks to everyone, and have a wonderful day, and happy Halloween.
Back at you.
Thank you.